Hello everyone, welcome to my talk today on outbound marketing, specifically deep dive for Outbound 2020, outbound marketing for next year and beyond. My name is Edwin Abl, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Modulr, and in today's session I'm hoping to give you a bit of context around what is working and not working with regards to outbound marketing, plus also provide some insight into 2020, how you can be successful, tactics and strategies to help scale your outbound efforts. In terms of my background, I guess that helps to phrase the perspective on my background. I've now been working in B2B selling and marketing for a good 15 years. I've worked in a variety of different environments, from pure startup, sort of under 10 employees, to enterprise scale organisations. The last, I would say, sort of 10 years has been a really interesting period where I picked up a lot of skills in terms of scaling and processes, and I've always had a core background in the actual outbound marketing piece, and that's hopefully what I'm going to share with you today. I worked for an organisation called Aperio, where we grew the pipeline to 133 million US in a 5-year period, scaled across multiple regions. And now, most recently, I'm working for an organisation called Modulr. Modulr is a payments API platform. We're growing very fast in the UK and internationally. And a lot of what I'm talking about today is a playbook that I have and run within my team, and I hope that sort of learnings from what I've experienced over the previous 5 years plus, to be incredibly beneficial. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about Modulr and myself and my background, go to www.modulrfinance.com, and my personal website is www.edwinabl.com. Fantastic. So going into the bulk of the content, I first wanted to phrase with a key challenge that you potentially could face, and that's starting with the assumption around what does success look like? What are the key conversion rates for outbound marketing, and what should you sort of set as a good benchmark for yourself? You could probably Google and get sort of different stats on the variety of different outcomes that you'd be looking for, but the stats I'm just going to show you now are what essentially I've seen in the hands-on process of doing outbound marketing across different industries. And so what average conversion rates can you expect? Well, in what I've analysed across my teams and what I've done personally, I think you can normally assume to receive a 8% to 10% response rate, whether that be via email, whether that be on LinkedIn. That's typically what you'll find, and what you call response rate is in some ways the stuff that gets people really excited. Someone replies to your LinkedIn saying, hey, let's have a chat. But we all know the difficulties with outbound, and that doesn't necessarily lead to conversions. If you look at the statistics then on what goes through to what you'd call an initial sales meeting or discovery call, I've found that ratio normally looks at around 1 to 2% as an average. When we've done effective campaigns that have been high converting, you can probably look at getting into the 8% to 15% range when you're thinking of scale. So I'm looking there at stats around 100 outbound messages cold to then getting that response rate. If you go very personalised, those responses can be much higher in terms of conversions, but the main challenge most people try to actually solve for in what I've been speaking to people is, how do you scale the outbound? And if you're looking to scale outbound, which has its own perils, which I'll discuss in a minute, you should expect this sort of response rate. That in itself is a challenge, right? Because we're trying to get new business opportunities, we're trying to build a pipeline quickly, and we're faced with very low conversion rates. Couple that with the longevity of deal velocity in B2B. Again, a lot of people don't realise that you've got to start quicker and sooner than you think, because an initial sort of response to a cold email to outbound to then conversion depends on your products, sort of small, mid-market to enterprise. It can be a long time. So the route to revenue is significantly long, especially when you're in startup and startup mode. So you've got to remember that and start early. With that scary stat in mind, I thought what would be helpful then is to give you an insight into 7 things I don't believe about outbound marketing, because a lot of these are the cliched tactics that a lot of people deploy at the moment, and this is why it's important for thinking ahead into 2020 around what are the things you're going to focus on that will make you more successful and have an effect on those specific conversion rates. I hope within these 7 I'm going to provide a sort of tactical example so you can perhaps go away and take something straight away, but willing to also dig into details outside of this actual presentation. Let's talk about point 1. So one thing I don't believe is that it's all about automation. I think if you look at any marketing blogs or sales blogs, it's all about how do you automate things, how do you automate to scale. That's the key thing. It's all about hyper-personalization at scale. So the point here is it's a tactic that has now been deployed for a few years, and its real impact is diminishing. And so when you think of automation, I think you need to, especially going into next year and the effects of icing changes over the 2019, is how do you actually provide more of a personalized experience, and don't think automation as the magic bullet. I'll give you an example of this in particular. I think sort of 2 to 3 years ago there was the initial automation tools on LinkedIn, and there's other tools like Phantom Buster you can leverage to do certain things. I tested these heavily with my team. We're currently using a product called Zopto actually to help do LinkedIn automation. And at first it was, this is exciting. We can set up 10-stage sequences and reach a scale through plugging in the Sales Navigator search, and it's going to get us lots of leads and opportunities. And to be frank, what I've found with the automation aspect is it's a lazy way of going about your business development, and it's certainly something that I would avoid doing going into 2020 and the next few years. How I've seen it materialise is sort of connect rates are lower. The actual conversion from LinkedIn sequences and messaging from a direct prospecting perspective are very, very low indeed. And so it made me shift my strategy to think of it more around an awareness play rather than a direct prospecting play. And I think that's how you need to think of it. And we'll come on to more about connecting the dots with tactics later on. But I would leverage automation in the sense of building awareness for your product or your own personal brand into the market that you want to market to from a mass perspective. You're not going to get the granularity on the data, who you're targeting. It's going to be sloppy, and so it's not going to get you direct conversions. Yes, you can have incredibly good copy that might get you some conversation started, but I guarantee if all you do is rely on these tools like Zopto and others for direct prospecting, your actual response rates will be very, very, very small indeed. So I would avoid that as much as you can. So the point to finish on there is that people and consultants and other people I've met, they rave about automation. It's the way you scale your outbound. I would urge a sense of caution and think about how you can use automation to supplement what you do, not to rely on it as your engine for getting leads. The second point in terms of I don't believe about outbound marketing is this point on adding value. I've been guilty of myself this over the last many years. Throughout my career, actually, I can recall numerous times I've been in a meeting and said the way you nurture prospects and the way you deliver great prospecting is to add value. And I at one point feel that was the right thing to do. People often say also, you've got to create a value exchange, got to add value to the prospect to nurture. And I think we've come to a point where everyone's adding value to this date. The adding value point actually loses its perspective in terms of what you're trying to achieve with it. Again, I'll give a direct example. A lot of the times, you'll get a response from LinkedIn or your email. Might not be the right time to buy. So what you decide to do is you create nurture buckets, and then you put those specific people into nurture buckets to nurture moving forwards. What that looks like in the past, and I've certainly run campaigns like this, is dropping a note once a month with, hey, here's a useful article for you. No need to reply, just thought I'd be helpful. And by that adding value, you feel, okay, I'm building a nurture bucket of someone that's going to buy from me at some point. I think what I've learned over the periods is it's great to do that from the point of view of, yes, you are trying to be helpful to a prospect, but what it doesn't do is convert, and what you tend to see happens is that you'll get lots of people replying every time saying, oh great, thank you very much. Nothing ever goes anywhere, and you're just stuck in this constant nurturing loop. And so what I would recommend, and I'll touch upon it in my takeaways, is that you have to focus on the copy being very pithy and very, I guess, not confrontational, but to sort of spark interest, curiosity, and challenge your prospect rather than adding value. And what that looks like is more focused on a specific sort of pain that you think they might have. So an example of that would be you've nurtured someone for a couple of months, and the next email you would send to them is, have you given up on your idea to implement a payments platform, as an example. So instead of dropping them a note, oh, here's a great article on payments, you're actually asking them a direct question to see how their programs and projects are performing. And with that, it sort of stimulates the response that they may realise they're behind and come back to you and want to kick off a conversation. So please don't just add value, because it will never convert. So move away from this constant add value nurturing to thinking about what each individual challenge and pain point your prospect is having, and communicate that to them in the nurture process rather than nice articles, ebooks, etc., which you can do again as a supplement, but don't rely on it full stop. The third point on, and the other thing I don't believe on outbound marketing is and I have numerous debates with individuals around this, what is the right way to go about it, is this point on being direct with the ask. So some would say it's really important to be very direct, book the meeting, that's your goal, you shouldn't beat around the bush. You need meetings on the board, you've got to be direct. And I'll give you an example of what direct looks like at the moment with Outbound. You connect on LinkedIn, within milliseconds you get an email from someone pitching you their product or service. I probably get around 10 to 15 of those approaches per day. Out of those, there is maybe the odd one which will sound maybe interesting, and I'll go and scope out that prospect's website and see what they do. However, overall, it's a really poor way of engaging, and I delete predominantly most of them. Again, they're not sparking a conversation. They're not trying to, show that their product solves a particular challenge. They're just straight to the pitch. Everybody's doing it. So in 2020, just make sure that you don't fall into that trap. Don't automate a sequence that then pitches someone straight away after connecting. It won't work, and it doesn't work. It may work 1 in 200, perhaps, but it doesn't work as a good strategy. So please think about how you engage a prospect, and you don't fall into this complacency of connect, pitch. Don't pitch straight away. Build engagement with whoever you're trying to work with. The fourth point is this whole issue on video, and I think it's an interesting one because I've at points been an advocate of using tools like Loom, for example, that we're actually that I'm recording this on, and getting my SDRs to try video. I guess a lot of the vendors who sell video solutions are very self-promoting around how conversion rates are huge with video. I meet other SDR managers or heads of growth or CMOs, and they also talk around video. Oh, it's a great way to improve conversion rates. Again, in all testing that I've ever done with video in terms of cold prospecting, it just is not that effective. It also takes a lot of admin and bandwidth away from your SDR or yourself, because making video is hard, and you lose a lot of time doing other things. And not everyone's good on video, so that makes it a real challenge. And if you're not to the point and very succinct, you actually lose more of an opportunity to engage than via email. However, there are specific examples lately of how you could use video to, again, when you look at nurturing people. I don't know if you know this, but on LinkedIn, if you are speaking to someone on LinkedIn, you can actually drop a prospect a video directly from the in-mail area. And what that does actually, which is clever, is it pops up on their phone as a notification that they've received a video. Obviously, they have to have LinkedIn notifications on to do that. If you send an in-mail to someone, it doesn't automatically pop up in the same way. So what it does, it acts like a text message, WhatsApp message, that goes directly to their in-mail. Been testing this recently, and it is working very effectively for re-engaging old prospects. And think about that, how you could use that in 2020, how to use video, but in a very specific way. So in short, I don't think it's a great cold approach, way of doing things, but I do think if you can think of your workflow and where you can embed video in emails and other outreach tactics, it could have an impact on your conversion rates. The fifth thing I don't believe about outbound marketing is on this ABM is the future. And the point on ABM, and it gets me quite frustrated when I speak to people around ABM, I do think ABM, or account-based marketing, is a fantastic way of going about your go-to-market, but it's nothing new at all. It's just a terminology that's been created for focus and personalization and better marketing. So yes, ABM is encouraging better marketing, but it's not anything that's especially brand new or different to what's been done before. And the example here is, we have to do ABM in our outbound rather than what we're doing at the moment. And then you think about creating two streams of outreach processes on the outbound. This one's ABM and this one's our normal approach. It's the same thing. All your outbound should be hyper-personalised, well-researched, strong message in terms of how you're solving a problem for accounts and prospects. And those are the key things to focus on, not thinking about creating an ABM program. And what you'll do as well is you'll have discussions around ABM and again, thinking about right now and moving into next year, you'll spend months creating an ABM strategy. You don't need to. You just need to think around how you get more specific and granular with your outbound strategy and process in general. So the point here is, do the job properly in terms of research, account targeting, account lists, all that stuff. And it's theoretically a very similar process to ABM. And that's not to diminish what ABM is, because especially in enterprise, ABM is a very strategic approach. But my point I'm trying to make here is, you don't need to over-engineer sort of an outbound marketing approach based on ABM and sort of these really confusing conversations around how do you embed ABM in that outbound process. The sixth and second to final point on what I don't believe is using clickbait subject lines. I think, again, the point being here, this worked a couple of years ago. You could, and I when I first started my career, actually, I was often taught to use subject lines similar to "as discussed" or "referred from Steve," who and they were sort of a made-up referral, and I'd start the email with "as referred from Steve," picking a colleague. In short, I mean, you did get high open rates originally, but I think where we're getting to now is there's so much spam on cold email, there's so much spam on LinkedIn. People are trying to think of ways of tricking a prospect to get high open rates. And as a marketer, well, it depends if you're a marketer or a founder or a salesperson. If you're a marketer, you might think that's great to report back to your boss that you've got 50% open rates because you've used a clickbait subject line. That gets them to open, is incredibly persuasive. But because you're going in with the wrong ethos, you're not getting good conversion ratios to meetings. And so the point, I think, to finish on this one is a very simple one. Just make sure the subject line is naturally appealing enough to want to open, but is factual and it is actually interesting for the prospect. It's going to entice them to open, perhaps with some curiosity. And evolve and test constantly. The same subject lines gets copied by everyone constantly, and that reduces your effectiveness. This year, the common one's been your company, sort of hyphen, their company, your name, their name, meeting next week, all these ones. So people are getting a bit savvy to them, and what you don't want then is a prospect opening the email and thinking, ugh, it's a sort of a clickbait type of subject line. And the final one and thing I don't believe about outbound, from experience again, and the thing that I've learned is that campaigns have to be multi-touch. So I think, and I even presented on this 2 years ago at a marketing conference. I put up a great slide around how you build a 25-day sequence from using Twitter, LinkedIn, emails, all those things, phone, and it's all about multi-touch. That's the key. I think my observation or perception on how you need to design moving forward is not creating these maybe elaborate sequences that have a few problems. They're very hard to maintain and actually structurally run. So my SDRs always struggle with multiple campaigns, with multiple touch points, because they have 50 reminders in their CRM or their Asana instance. They don't know when they're supposed to be calling. They don't know when they're doing Twitter and this, etc., etc. And what I would recommend as an example is get very niche with your targeting. Don't think about designing in a multi-touch frame of reference, as in day 1 call, day 3 email, day 4 reply, day 4. There is some value to that, but I think what's more valuable is that you design a campaign which is engaging. So going back to this ABM and focus point, get the account list clear, get a niche and smaller amount of people to go after, because multi-touch fails because you're trying to do too much, and again, you're trying to do too much, it gets confusing and it's not effective. And I think a way more effective is maybe then just to leverage one platform with a smaller data set, and just use one specifically, for example LinkedIn or email together, but don't obsess around creating 25-day sequencing of multi-touch campaigns. Just obsess more around keeping a simple process where you've then well researched the prospect and you can manage all the data effectively so that you know what's actually happening. This presents a different problem when you're trying to do at scale. Again, company size, I've worked in scenarios where small company, very manual, you have to do it yourself, to the last 6 years where everything's around how do you scale a process. And the thing again which fails when you're in scale up phase or scaling phase, like I've experienced from going from 1 SDR to 15 SDRs, is you still have to keep it simple and focused, and sort of you have to sort of design with simplicity and not over engineer the sequencing, because that'll fail in terms of process. And you have to be a bit manual, and then what you do is you leverage certain tools to try and create some sort of scale out of the back of it. Again though, if you look at the way every market's going, unless you're really broad mass market SME, it is about focus, and it's around doing a better job and doing it more effectively. And so that's the key thing on this point, is it's doing the campaign in a more focused fashion, potentially just using one platform or two rather than multi-sequence campaigns that are far too complicated to be effective. So those are my 7 things I don't believe about outbound marketing. And to wrap up, what I want to provide at least some ideas and sort of tactics on what you need to do. And I guess my firm belief and takeaway here is actually people often see outbound in a silo. Again, we'll be completely dependent if you're a 1-2-man startup or 2-person startup, or you're a team of 10, or you're a scale up, or you're a 50 million ARR business. But in my most recent experience of being more in the scale up phase, hyper growth, what you need to do is make sure that you don't do your outbound marketing in a silo. And I think this is one of the main problems people are having. And in 2020, I would encourage you to build a whole structural program on what outbound is and how it fits into your overall strategy and go-to-market strategy. I've put an example on the slide here of one that I created a few years ago using a tool called Coggle. But I looked at sort of partners we work with, PR, what's our outreach plan, what's our product launch blueprint, what's our field marketing process, and I built a series of sort of diagrams and models that connected all the dots together and embedded outbound in that process. And I think the big thing again for outbound in 2020, it's around how you engage people, not only directly, but how you build awareness with people. It's the whole point of what's happened in marketing the last few years and how the funnel's changed, and now even looking at the bow tie funnel, it's around how you don't just pitch directly. You need to build an awareness engagement program with all your customer base that spans across different things. How are events mapped to your outbound? People forget to use events effectively with outbound. How is your PR linked to outbound? How is your product roadmap linked to outbound? Like, you have to design an experience that covers all the marketing channels, and it's not just around, I need some meetings. Outbound marketing is get some data, write a message, send some messages, get some meetings, repeat, rinse. That's a non-effective and tactical way about doing things. To be really successful, if you want to build sort of a legacy for your area or improve conversion rates way above the sort of 1 to 2%, you have to get each person and map them across a whole journey of all your different touch points. And outbound marketing is just one of them. So in 2020, outbound is all about being connected across channels. In terms of takeaways to wrap up, and building on my last point around building a connected journeys, these are 3 really simple things that you can do right now to scale outbound or to improve conversion ratios for outbound. You could get them started right now, and I would assume if done right, you'll start producing results in Q1 or before Christmas. Don't wait until January to kick this off. Start it now and think around your 2020 goals. So at the top, build a connected plan. Make sure you invest time and research into building a connected plan across all your channels and what the process and engagement process looks like. Then take these 3 key themes to scale outbounds. Get the basics right. There's no mystical and mythical way of over-engineering this point. Outbound is often successful in the basic foundations that you do. And the 2 most important things is getting the right data. So getting the right data with the right accounts. If you don't have that, it will always fail. So use freelancers to build those data sets if you don't have time. Over the years, I've always mapped an SDR with a freelancer that we get via Upwork. You have to train them and coach them, but it's important that you can get them up and running. Get the right intent data. Again, so a tip here is, look at LinkedIn Sales Navigator, people who have changed roles in the last 30 days. Set up a process around that. The intent of someone changing a role will mean they're more likely to buy in the next few months, because that's what happened when someone joined. So think around your data process. What's the intent data? Have you got the right data? And have you got the right target accounts? It sounds so basic and it's not rocket science, but people get that wrong. The second part that goes in line with this is invest time in writing the right copy. Do the research and do not worry about scaling at this point. Just worry about writing really pithy, interesting and curiosity-driven outbound emails or in-mails to people. It's harder than you think. Most people cut corners. Most people will get templates from the web. They'll just repurpose them for themselves. Every outbound marketing process or email copy, it's incredibly unique. If someone had solved this problem, there wouldn't be a need for expertise on outbound selling, because it would be super easy. Not one template is effective. You have to find the right template for you. Please do spend that time researching, and if you wanted to connect on that, I have got some specific techniques on what works with that regard. So please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to dig in more detail. The second tip is building on my broader point of connected. Think about how you integrate with all other channels and your broader plan, but don't make it too complicated. So please do think about it in a simplistic way. I'll give you an example of that in a simplistic way, is using digital in combination with your outbound. What you can do is have a target list of 50 people that you've written exceptionally good targeted emails to send and ready to send. What you can also do at the same time is run awareness ads on LinkedIn using that custom audience data. And what that will do is, when you're then doing your outreach process, your potential prospects would see a banner ad potentially on LinkedIn, or a retargeting ad, or just an ebook download. But you're not driving that digital funnel with the aim of getting a direct lead. You're doing it to supplement whatever your outbound prospecting is doing. And that's really important determination, because then it's the thing how you report back, because you're not going to be looking at that, I've spent £5,000 on digital but I've got no leads, because what you're looking to do is integrate it into the outbound marketing process overall, so that it supports, reinforces all that cold prospecting that goes on in the background. And I've seen, if you do that right, if you embed digital alongside outbound prospecting, you do start seeing trends of greater inbounds, greater conversion ratios after a sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 month time, because you're building constant awareness. If you're doing that in combination with an automated tool, like I said before, not for direct prospecting, but just for constant awareness building in your community or prospect base, you'll again see better results as a consequence. And the final point, and I would always encourage this, is I know I sort of downplayed video, but I did provide one example of an experiment that's recently been able to be executed via LinkedIn. It is important to experiment and read and learn about best practice. Over the years, I always see there's a 3 to 6 month window of how a new tactical strategy works with outbound. So read now, or kind of research now. What are the key trends? And obviously I have a few that we deploy, but can't reveal that in detail, because I know that it gets copied within a 3 to 6 month period, and you have that really short window. Don't be the individual starting the outbound tactic when everyone else has used it for 6 months, because again, the reason conversion rates are higher with new tactics is because it's a new way of doing something, and people are then more likely to sort of open, and you can do this through like a specific tech tool. I remember many years ago when I used Mixmax for a year before it became more widely known. It was an excellent way to engage people. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a specific thing, but it could be a piece of tech, it could be a bit of process, it could be a way of doing something, aka the LinkedIn video nurture. But do experiment, have experiments as part of the core of what your outbound marketing strategy should be. And like I said, try and find 1 or 2 tactics which is not widely adopted, and really invest in doing those, and you'll see higher conversion rates as a consequence. Great. Well, thanks for listening. Again, the main point I was really trying to emphasise in today's short talk was that There's common myths that you can deal with, and I went through those in detail, and I hope there were some interesting points in there to make you rethink how you're doing certain things. And the broader takeaway point around building a connected cross-channel outbound campaign. So don't see outbound in a silo, but think about the whole marketing process or sales process, and make sure outbound is the core component across all channels and how each and every channel supports the process. And if you get that right in 2020, then I guarantee you'll see much higher conversion rates. If you wanted to keep in touch or have a conversation with me, there's various different routes. So I have a website, www.edwinabl.com. I have a blog on Medium, which is called Demand-Karma. You can read that there. My Twitter handle is @EdAbl, and my LinkedIn profile, Edwin Abl. I run a weekly newsletter where I share different things I learn about leadership, marketing and well-being, which I send every Saturday at 11:30. If you wanted to subscribe, please go to my website, and also go check out modularfinance.com. We're a fast-growing payments organisation, and we're looking for great people on an ongoing basis and supporting our growth and aspirations this year and into 2020. And with that, hope your outbound marketing efforts have a new chance to get revamped for the end of the year in 2020, and best of luck.